Well, brings us back to 2019 pre-pandemic. And we're an industry that feeds off of each other. The human connection, which we've talked a lot about in the conference, is what makes this industry go. It's the fountain of creativity, innovation. And people have been craving to come back. Look, let's face it, screens were very, very important in the middle of COVID to ensure that we had connectivity. But it's not a rich experience. It is handicapped by its limitations in essentially one to a few. Here, face to face, we have one to many. And people that we haven't seen before give us the ideas of the other connections that we don't necessarily feel day to day. So people who I might not have bumped into on screen, I now bump into here. And the dialogue and the exchanges and the energy and enthusiasm that comes out of that is incredibly palpable and very, very rich.
So Bob, we're gathered, it's great. By the same token, there is an undercurrent of concern about the economy, and I'm sure every brand marketer on the stage and off the stage are thinking about it. How has sort of this, and they're under pressure, there's a lot of expectations for performance, for brand building, budgets in some cases are being cut.
Sure.
What are sort of the pressures and solutions and, what's happening in the light of this sort of, the headwinds?
Yeah, the headwinds are real. But we've already been experiencing headwinds. First of all, coming out of COVID, we had some headwinds. We are facing current economic headwinds. The GDP of America was flat or down in the first half of the year. Even though there were plenty of people employed, the reality is that the economic ecosystem was not necessarily conducive for long-term growth. So what is now compounding that is inflation, which is causing reactions towards raising interest rates and potentially further depressing the economy. Now, I use the word potentially because we don't know. And there are economic undercurrents underway that we'll never really understand what's real and what's not. But every lesson we've ever learned through recessions and downturns and whatever is that this is not the time to be able to cut your media budgets. It's not the time to take your foot off the pedal because, as we talked about at the very beginning of this conference, those companies which have strong brands outperform those that do not. And so the emphasis needs to be on continued brand building. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't invest in performance marketing. We need a balance of both. And it's always been that way. It should never be 100% one way or the other. But the ability to keep the brand messaging forward while you're doing your performance marketing, we think is the right combination for moving forward without cutting total budgets. Now, that's a hard thing to do because there's always going to be those economic pressures that the CFOs are going to want to ensure that they deliver on their numbers to Wall Street. But if they have the patience, they have the tolerance, and they have the strong brands, they'll survive in the long term.
So Bob, it was very interesting that you guys started the sessions on Wednesday with Walmart, Walmart Connect, and P&G and Pepsi about retail media.
Right.
What's happening with retail media and why should we be listening?
Well, it's evolution. In this industry, things that we didn't expect 5 to 10 years ago are now dominating, and retail media networks have been exploding. It's going to be a $50 billion category next year. And when you think about what has taken place in marketing and media, is the level of connectivity that's taken place and essentially the elimination of boundaries. So why would Walmart be in the retail media business? Because it works. I mean, think about where Verizon and AT&T started a lot of that trend years ago, going into places that they were never expected to go. So what we have historically classified as traditional marketers or traditional agencies or traditional media platforms, no, you can be more than those. But what they're finding is that this is a better way to be able to reach the consumer. So these types of media structures now provide great pathways for individual companies to be able to expand their reach at an affordable price in a far more controlled environment. So we don't have to just simply rely upon programmatic media, which we don't always know where it all goes, to something which has a greater degree of certainty for it and potentially a better return on investment for marketers.
Bob, one more follow-up question to
Sure.
that about programmatic and the health of the programmatic ecosystem, which you have addressed vociferously in the past. Where does that stand in terms of the health of the programmatic ecosystem?
Yeah, we have a study that we'll probably be finalizing in February, March, April, in that particular time frame. And the reason why we conduct this study is that there have been enough instances which suggest that programmatic media, particularly the transparency of it, is suboptimal with respect to where marketers are spending their money. Whether they're getting the return on the investment, whether they're getting the absolute real reach out there, not conflicted by bots or other sources of, we'll call it questionable target audiences, would suggest that we have to figure out how to be able to optimize programmatic media. So the transparency issue is in fact real. By the work that was done by ISBA, the UK equivalent of the ANA a few years ago, which essentially set the pace for the fact that a relatively small percentage of programmatic media investments are reaching their intended targets. And we're talking potentially as low as 15 to 25%, which suggests that there is real inefficiency in it. Low cost, but potentially real inefficiency that marketers have to navigate. So we're doing this study because with greater technology than when the original ISBA study was done, we are going to have far more marketers participating. We have over 30 marketers that will be participating, providing real data and the opportunity to kind of get a real peek under the covers so that we can essentially talk about what is happening and what should be happening in order to improve the productivity of those investments.